Good morning, welcome. It is Pastry Week here at Board Game Barrister, our local game shop in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, because today we played the Great British Baking Show, a board game based on the amazing show, where we have to try to finish our signature technical and showstopper challenges and try to earn those Hollywood handshakes and do it before our other players can finish their timers as well. I'm here with my fellow barristers, Ian, Glenn, and Elizabeth, and we're going to talk you through everything we thought about the game and the things we liked most about it, but before we do that, let's talk about how to play. Welcome to the Great British Baking Show game. Each time we sit down to play this game, we're going to play 1 week of the competition, which means we're going to choose one type of bake we'd like to work on this week. We could do desserts, cakes, international, biscuits, breads, and pastries. Let's look at pastries. We're going to start each game with the signature challenge. In Pastry Week, that is the croissant. Now, there's a couple things involved in each challenge, the first of which is the actual shape of the bake we're going to work on this week. So you can see our croissant shape here is what we're working on. There's a bunch of sponge involved in this, as well as some filling, and then you can get some extra points for style. Also on the challenge card are the 3 tiers of quality you can work on for this bake, which we'll talk about in just a second. All we have to do to start each challenge is to set up our timer tokens in the center of the table and then shuffle our player decks, and we're ready to go. To start us off, somebody's going to say ready, set, bake, and then we're going to start trying to build that croissant. How do we actually bake? Well, it's all done in real time, so there's no turn taking and we go as fast as we can, and we're just going to start drawing cards off the top of the deck and see what we get. My first card is a normal sponge. Now, I do need sponge because we have to build each of our bakes starting from the bottom row. So I've got 2 sponges out on the left and right side of my bake here that I need to get before I can add anything else to this croissant. So I'm going to put that right there to be the beginning of this bake and see what I get next. My next one is a filling, this blue card here. Now, I can't put in my fillings yet. I haven't quite gotten to a place where I can put those adjacent to what I've already worked on. So instead, I can discard that to one of my baker's 3 piles here, and I'll have access to those later on. So let's keep seeing what we get here. My next one is an icing, which I know I don't need anywhere in this bake, so I'm going to toss that in one of these piles and probably never look at it again. Now I've got a good crumb, which is a special kind of sponge that's going to give me some bonuses later on potentially, and I'm going to add that right next to my current one so that I can start adding those fillings. You can see here I could now play my fillings adjacent to this good crumb that I just put down, so I'll add that sweet filling to the croissant right here, and we're going to keep building from there as we go. Here I've put a style card on top of one of my discards because I'm going to have it as an optional thing I can use at the end of this round, and I'll see if I have time to get style on top of this croissant as well. Now my croissant is technically done right now. These pink spots up around the top of the croissant are style, and they're totally optional and are not required in order to complete this bake. Now why wouldn't I keep drawing and adding those optional style? Well, there is a time element in this game where we're competing to finish as fast as possible so that we can get the higher timer tokens along the side here. The first player who wants to be done with their completed bake can choose that top 5-point timer token, and that means they're going to score 5 points off of that as well as any points from the judging this round. As soon as more players finish and there's only 1 player remaining and we're down to the 1 red 1-point timer token, that player has to stop drawing from their deck and can only play the top cards of their discards to try to finish their bake off. Let's say I had stopped there and scored my 5-point timer token. After everybody's done, we're going to turn to those judging options and then see how we did. The first thing we're always going to check is the Soggy Bottom Award, which is just that you need to have completed the croissant correctly in this case. So we can see here the shape shown on this card is the correct shape I have here. There are a couple cards you can see here with spoons on them. Those are raising agents, yeast, and the like, and they don't have any relevance in this bake, so those are just going to count as normal sponge in this bake. So for completing the bake, we would get 2 points unless we can get something better. We're going to look at the Great Bake next, which means we have to have had no soggy sponge and at least 1 good crumb card. So you can see there's no soggy sponge. Those look like these, and I successfully avoided them, so there's no soggy in my bake. And I have got 2 good crumbs, so I've definitely got at least 1 of those. I will score the Great Bake as well, and then we can look and see if we can get all the way to the Hollywood Handshake. That requires you to have had 2 good crumb as well as all the style that was shown on the bake card. Now you can see I would have needed all 3 of those styles, which we already know I didn't get. I did have those 2 good crumbs, so that's a shame we didn't quite get to the Hollywood Handshake, but maybe next round, but that 5 timer token was worth it this time. Next up, we're going to move on to the technical challenge, which is an eclair in this case, and then finally onto miniature tarts, the showstopper. And whenever you see a ×3 up in the corner like this, that means that you have to build 3 of that pattern in order to finish your bake. The last 2 little parts of the game, first of is your bin. You can toss cards from your bake into the bin to replace them with something else if you'd like, once per bake. So So if I wanted to, I could flip over my bin token and get rid of this soggy sponge I've got sitting in here and hopefully replace it with something better after that. And lastly is the help card. When you find that help card in your deck, you've got to use it immediately, and you can search through the 8 cards face up in the middle of the table and choose from those what you'd like to add to your bake next. So that's a little handy wild helper sometimes. At the end of our 3 challenges, we're going to count up our points and see who won Star Baker this week.
I really like how they've applied the theme to the game. They've got these little goals of things that you have to make, and each of them is totally unique, and you have to just start thinking, wow, how am I going to build this? And it really mimics that feel of both, I need to make this crazy thing that I've never made before, and because we're all racing, it has that panic in the tent feeling to it. So it kind of has the fun creativity of baking and the rush of being on the show. It actually brings that in a way that was kind of unexpected for me.
If you want to do your thing and not have anybody mess with you and be able to do an interesting little puzzle, then I think the game is going to be really great for you. And the fact that you can do it at a quick pace simultaneously with the rest of the people at the table means you're never waiting around for the other players to finish their turn, or it come back to you, or them take one out of the draw pile that you needed, or whatever it might be. There's almost none of that because you're doing it all simultaneously at your own pace. Soggy, this thing.
Style. Come on, Hollywood, come on. One of the parts I was most interested in before we even played was kind of the balance between speed and quality of your bakes. So you're basically choosing at all times whether you want to just finish really fast, throw in as much soggy sponge as you can to try to get your bake done, but then maybe suffer for it in the actual judging portion. But when you're done earlier, you get to take a higher point token for having finished earlier. So there is an advantage to just kind of throwing it all out there, not doing a perfect job of it, but then also getting more points on the timer. On the flip side, we all found that we were all playing very perfectionist, where we were all going all the way for the Hollywood Handshake every single round to try to get those, so it became just a race between a bunch of perfectionists for us. But if I played again, I'd probably start to try to push it a little bit more and accept a little bit more soggy sponge into my life.
One of the things I liked about it was the management of your discard piles, because as you're going through, you're trying to find, I don't need icing at all, I want that in my cake, I don't need icing. You know, the things that I want to save, I can use in these specific discard piles. Well, I have one where it's just like, I don't need any of these. I know I'm using no savory. I want those gone, and I want that in that discard pile. And then hopefully stacking these up in a way that I can then pull them when I need them, because if you pack, it's like, I need that, I'm going to need that now, I can use that now. So.
Yeah, you really need those discard piles with that limitation of building your bake from the bottom up.
Yep.
That's soggy bottoms.
Oh, you guys took all the good helps.
Yep. Don't want that. Don't want that.
Useless help.
You're done? Get out. Alright, so who do we think should be playing this game? The first is going to be somebody who just wants a super lighthearted game where you're building literal pastries out of cards, and you know, it's sometimes the luck of the draw isn't on your side, you're trying to get the Hollywood Handshake, and you just love the idea of baking in the Great British Baking Show. It's delightful, and they hit the theme on the nose, so it's really fun for that, and it takes literally 10 minutes to play. If you are really competitive, you could turn this game into an actual full show where you played through all 6 of the different series weeks of what different baking you're doing. And then over the course of those 6 weeks, you can play through all of those in less than 2 hours probably. If you like the idea of playing through the entirety of the Great British Baking Show, you probably want to do it mostly if you are in it to win it, but it would be a really fun concept regardless.
Great British LARP.
The Great British LARP. Dress up as your character, show up ready to bake. Alright, well, I think that about does it for our Great British Baking Show this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a great time playing, and we hope you had a fun time watching, and the game looked fun to you as well. As always, if you hit that like, that means the algorithm's going to show this video to more people. We really appreciate that. Subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and we will see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.